Oh, welcome back. Thank you for coming back. I should say there's a set of notes, I don't know, a dozen sides of notes with quotations and the research, etc. And they'll be sent to you afterwards. So you may be able to make sense of this thing, on paper rather than what you're seeing now. But there is some substance coming. There I was talking about Haven and Haven's £138 million by effectively just treating their customers like revenue on legs. And so anyway, the owner of Haven Holidays, a guy called John Cook, got cancer and was going to die, knew it was so, and he saw the TV programme. And he said, Marcus, would you help me get this company in a different shape before I go? I've become a friend of the King of Spain. I've made all this money with Haven and Butlins, which I own, and Warner Hotels, and I've lost my way. I've become a friend of the King of Spain. We ride together, do falconry together, and I've let my company be run by the Wide Boys. And I'm ashamed of it, and I want to go with a different reputation. So we had an emergency meeting with the board of directors over a bank holiday weekend. Can you imagine that? Coming to the Runnymede Hotel to meet me for 3 days on a bank holiday Monday and the weekend. They looked in worse condition than you do in terms of wanting this session. But anyway, I went in there and said, so we've got some real work to do. They said, no, we don't. We're all right, really. If you look at how we're going, we've got really engaged people. We measure that, and we've got high levels of engagement. We've got customer advocacy like you never did see, strong net promoter score. Our customers love us, and we're making all this money. So look, John Cook's going to die soon anyway. So all we need to do is do a bit of an airbrushing of the state of the business in terms of the strategy. But we're not going to change anything because we're making money hand over fist. I said, well, I've been on my motorbike around the coast of Britain in preparation for this talk, this meeting with you, and I've been to your parks, and I think it's a really sorry mess that you're in at the minute. You might be making money, but you can't be proud of it. And they really bristled. Then I pressed the button on my laptop and showed quotations from people on parks who I'd met. And verbatim quotations. Your general manager of the year said to me, so please forgive the language, this isn't very pleasant, but this is exactly how it went. Marcus, see the people who come to these parks, look out there, they're thick as pig shit. He said, I don't know how offensive you'll find this, but he said, if you look at there's tattoos everywhere, earrings, they're the lowest of the low. That's what we have to deal with. In fact, all they want to do really is drink their heads off for a couple of weeks and have their children behind a chain link fence. They're not like you and me. I said, if you think that's bad, let's look at this one. And one sales director came in and said, I sold 7 shitters last week. I said, what's a shitter? That's the entry-level caravan. Sell them one of those, and then you get them on the ladder. And once we've got them sold, you see, and these people are so thick that they can't even read the small print, so they don't really know what they're buying. I mean, it's so insulting. I said, what about your team? What's your team like? Oh, well, you see, we're on the coast, and anybody who's got any nous about them leaves the coast and goes to the cities. So we're left with the local losers, mainly gays and lesbians. So, it couldn't be more abusive if you tried. And so I put these quotations up and said, that's what you're going with. And they said, it's not like that at all. I said, it's worse, and here came some more. But we argued all day. And then that evening, I was supposed to have dinner with them. They didn't invite me. So there is quite a pattern here, isn't there? And so anyway, the next morning, I thought, I'll get my coat. And I stepped into the meeting room again, and somebody said, so that stuff you were saying yesterday about I'm okay, you're okay, go over it again. And they'd had a kind of heart-to-heart that night, I think, over dinner. And it seemed like they'd had a bit of a sea change. Because in my argument with them, I'd got to the point of talking about transactional analysis. And that's an old theory by Eric Byrne, where he said, there's only one position to live life from. And that's the one where you realise you're good, and you're good enough, and your self-esteem needs to be intact. I'm a decent person with decent values, and I'm doing my best. And you have to believe that the next person you meet's the same. People are okay. Have to believe that people are decent, really. You get outliers, liars, and terrorists, and thieves, etc., but most people are good. And when somebody treats you badly, oh well, just suck it up and then step up to the next person again. Good morning, I'm okay, you're okay. It's the only way to live. It's not actually, you could live in other places. There's 3 other choices. If you don't live I'm okay, you're okay, then you take life position number 2, perhaps. I'm okay, you're not okay. And people slip into that one quite easily, the place of judgment. So I'm okay, it's other people. That is the trouble, actually, with Spurs fans, BMW drivers, and vegetarians. He said it again. But you know what I mean? It's really quick to get into that place of judgment. I'm okay, you're not okay. Next time you're parking your car in, by the looks of you, Waitrose car park, and you're just cutting in there, it might be that your partner says, oh, look, how are we going to get into that space? It's so tight. You know, it's typical, isn't it? It's a Range Rover driver. They parked across that white line. I'm never going to get in. It's probably some person who wears tweed at weekends and smokes cigars and runs a company, and that's what it's bound to be. You might want to say, honey, you're taking an I'm okay, you're not okay stance here. I wouldn't if I were you, but it might be they've only parked their car across that line because the previous car parked and forced them across it. Give them a break. But people are quite quick to go to a place of judgment. And you see, the trouble is, if you go to I'm okay, you're okay, if you go to that place, then just all that happens is people get into patterns, that's all. If you listen to the racists tonight in the pubs, and when they finish that conversation, they might want to say, well, what do we think about gays and lesbians? You know where it's going to go. You know, they're in that pattern of judgment. And if you do that for long enough, see, if you say to somebody in your team, you say to a child, you're not very clever, are you? You're not very bright, are you? Before we know it, we've taken an I'm okay, I'm not okay, you're okay stance. It's okay for you, you're a manager. It's okay for you, you've inherited land. It's okay for you, you went to university. And that's really corrosive for self-esteem. And by the way, if you get someone in that position for too long, they might even find life position number 4 helpful. I'm not okay, I've never been okay. My teachers told me I wasn't okay, and you married me, so you can't have any good judgment either. I don't know where the kids are going, but it's going to be, and before we know it, it's all gone down the tubes. And in the end, all we have to do is just keep to, if we can, an I'm okay, you're okay place. Because when you really live in that place, then you are prepared to include people. Come on, you're part of this, and give them control, because we believe they can achieve. See, most people don't know what their own capability is, leave alone what somebody else's is. In the SAS, they say, when you're absolutely knackered, you've got nothing left, you can't put another foot forward, at that point, you're probably at about 40% of true capacity. Just most people don't push themselves or try hard enough. But we have to believe that we can, and we have to believe that other people can surprise us. Our children will surprise us. They'll do things which surprise them. That's what real belief is. Manufacturing the confidence when the outcome's uncertain. You play tennis this evening against a 4-year-old, you'll play that game with confidence because you know you can win. But you don't need confidence then because you're going to win anyway. The time to manufacture confidence is when it's all uncertain, in the balance. That's the real thing. How do we do that routinely? That's a collective thing. Anyway, that's where we got to. I explained that again, and they said, well, what's okay for us? I said, well, let's decide where we're going. What's the picture? And you know, eventually they got to a point of thinking, 95%, do the research, 95% of people who go to a haven holiday, well, guess what they've got in common? They all come from towns and cities. What they really go there for is a break from the urban. No queues, what we decided to call a breath of fresh air, / jumpers for goalposts. And we made that that's really what they go for. They go for an old-fashioned holiday by the sea. Not very expensive, but a simple holiday in the sun and sand, and the wind and rain too. But that's what they go for. And so we decided, let's call it that. Let's be famous for being a breath of fresh air. A person could be a breath of fresh air. A team could be a breath of fresh air. A park could be a breath of fresh air. Holiday could be. Wouldn't that be brilliant, just to turn up the dial on that and come up with some... So that's where we're going, and who are we? Well, I think the who, the values, are good, but if you turn them into behaviours, how does a person need to behave to be the archetype in our business? Who are they really? And it was a really good workshop. You know, 2 days later we came out of there with a set of 5 values, the best values I've ever seen, actually, or behaviours. First one, positive mental attitude. You can't get anywhere without that. The trouble is, though, people don't talk like that. People don't walk around saying, they say when they've got that kind of attitude, yes, I can. We need to care about our customers, treat them properly with dignity. And so that means care is one of our values. But actually, you need to push the boat out a bit here because lots of people aren't caring, so you've got to step up for that. So let's call that one dare to care. And let's make everything simple so people can really understand these contracts really easily. And everything's frictionless. So we'll make that value number 3. And then it should be a joy to come here. That's why people came here in the first place. So fun is part of it. Let's not wait for the fun to happen. Let's make it. So that's value number 4. And last one, if it was your mum and dad coming to buy a caravan, then how would you treat them? Would you pull the wool over their eyes, or would you like them to be? So do the right thing. But you know, of all the values I've ever seen, those are my favourites. And by the way, they're so easy for me to remember. 2012, we made the plan. We made the breath of fresh air idea and got these values going. And then I met with all 450 managers in Haven Holiday Parks and said, here goes. This is what we're up for. And as long as you're doing something which is going to enable a breath of fresh air, then and you conform by these values, you can do just about anything. Have the freedom to act. So one man said, well, I've got hens at home. Would it be okay for me to bring my hens to the park and build a run for them there so kids can see where eggs come from and can take them back to their caravan? As long as it conforms to health and safety and it's doing the right thing, crack on. So one man said, I'm an ornithologist. And would it be okay for me to set up a hide on Flamborough Head and show the kids the names of the seabirds? Yes, lovely idea. I build tree houses. Would it be okay if I built them for my grandchildren? Could I build some tree houses? Yeah, nice. Can I organise five-a-side football? Why are we getting food from breaks? Because it's grown in the country, sent to the city, comes out of there again. Why don't we just go direct to farms? In fact, why don't we go to organic, show kids where food comes from? You know, it was like 5 go to the seaside. It was a revolution. It was fantastic. I've never seen a culture change like it. By the way, at the end of my talk, when I was speaking about the values to these 450 people, one man said, yeah, mate, but how much money are we going to make? I said, do you know, don't worry about the money. Just look after people with decency and the money will come in anyway. Yeah, but this is all about growth. How much money do you think? We make 138 million now. If we do all this stuff, it might go backwards. I said, it won't. Look after your people with real dignity. They'll look after your customers fantastically. Your customers will look after your profits. It always works like that. I've been doing this for 25 years. I've not seen it go the other way yet. You'll be all right. Yeah, but how much? I said, well, okay, how about this? It's 2012 now, 2016, that's the Olympic cycle. I bet you by 2016 you make 150 million. How do you know? I don't. I'm making it up just to shut you up. So, all right, then what's in it for me? What do I get? I said, ask your board of directors. So I turned to the board of directors and said, well, if you make 150 million, what's this gentleman going to get? And the MD said, well, I haven't thought that far ahead, Marcus. What do you suggest? I said, thanks. Another hospital pass. But I did a piece of work for a company called Nutrition Point, and they make food for celiacs. And at the time, their 2 owners were both celiac. And I did this workshop with them where I said, what's your goal here? And they went financial. So they said, we made £6 million profit last year. I said, good. How much are you going to make this year? Because we're really going to have a go. You know, take the gloves off and really get stuck in. And I did all I could to kind of rev them up. By lunchtime, I got them up to 8 million. By tea time, I got them to 10. I thought, good day's work. Easy for me. They've got to deliver it now. But they've made this promise of getting to 10. But how are you going to do that? They didn't know, but they'd just started. Now, this is true, but it's bonkers. They decided, well, the first thing to do is we've got to remind ourselves all the time that we're going for 10 million, because that's a stretch mindset's going to push us. So here we go. Let's have our daily meeting at 10 o'clock, so that it reminds us that 10 is the goal. In fact, when somebody goes the extra 10 yards for a customer, they get a £10 voucher from Marks and Spencer's or John Lewis. I saw a woman getting a 10-gallon hat for coming up with a bright idea. And I thought somebody brought 10cc music in for a while, but that died a death. But I thought, but at least they're getting it and doing it their way. But you know, by halfway through the year, they'd done 4.5 million. Then someone saying to the MD and his wife, so what happens if we actually make this? How do we celebrate? And he thought about it and said, we could have a day trip to Tenby. How about that? Somebody then said, what about Tenerife? He and his wife came back from lunch and said, actually, if we did 10 million, it's only 40 people in the business, or 45, we could take you to Tenerife. 10 days in Tenerife. Anybody up for this? I'm Spartacus. But all I know is every time I went to their offices, they just had posters of Tenerife, Harley Davidsons you could hire, scuba, hotels, just emotional pressure on the owners if we make our 10 million. Do you know they made 9.6 million that year? which is actually phenomenal, don't you think? Going from 6 to 9.6 on nothing but gusto and energy and enthusiasm and just fresh thinking. They did go to Tenerife for 9.6 days. That was the joke. But I just thought, isn't that something? So I told that story then. And, you know, that piece of work at Haven was an absolutely beautiful thing, actually. Because for what it's worth, they really got that culture going. And their employee engagement figures were 78. I mean, I don't know if that's true, but that's what they said it was in 2011, or at the end of 2011. But how about the next year? The Sunday Times have a list of the top 100 companies to work for. Toxic place like that, destroyed on TV by Watchdog. A year later, that might not be a true number. What we do know is they were Sunday Times number 3 company to work for. And they were in the top 5 companies to work for Sunday Times for the next 5 years. They're the only company that have been in the top 5 to work for in 5 years, after all that toxicity. I'm just saying, people say it takes a long time to change a culture. I don't think it does. I think when you get leaders who are really in and have made their minds up about something and you've got a really well-articulated plan, it's astonishing how it goes, and allow people to be free to try new things. See, the customer experiences went rather well too, and they're 150 million. Oh, by the way, there's a conversation on the parks. Look, if it's about doing the right thing, how come we charge them £2.50 for using an ATM? When customers come here, it's another way of ripping them off. Should we switch that charge off? Then the financial director is saying, this is a revenue stream. And look at how much money we'd lose if we switched the charge off. I know, but they're a captive market. That's why we're doing it. They bought their holiday. Why rip them off again? It's not fair. It's not right. So there's a big internal argument. Those are the best ones when the culture's really living. So they decided to switch the machines, the charge off the ATMs. By the way, what happens when you switch the charge off? I guess people get their money out. I guess they were going to a Cornish village, or a Scottish village for that matter, on the coast, and getting their money out there. Because I don't know how you explain that number exactly, but it is true. And by the way, Tim Gibson said, I'll take you on holiday, and I don't quite know where yet, but as Marcus has spoken about this nutrition point thing, I'll take you on holiday. It'll be the best holiday you've ever had. It won't be on a caravan park, but give me some time to think, and we'll see how the money goes. But does anyone know the W Hotel in Barcelona? But it's a rather fancy place, and we went there. It's like a 5-star hotel. They took 450 people. I got to my room, there's a litre of whiskey, a litre of gin, a litre of vodka, and all these mixers. I thought, crikey, I'm supposed to host a barnstorming party for the directors. I get downstairs into the lobby, there's 450 people saying, have you got 3 litres of booze in your room? This is going to be a complete bender. We've just got those 3 hours with Marcus to bore us to death, and then, but apart from that, 4 days. And you know, 20% of the people who came had never had a passport before, had to get a passport to come on holiday. And I'm not saying it's all about the idea of people being greedy and wanting material gains from doing good work, but I just think there is something about celebrating. You know, so marked with the picture's like this, but also how are you going to celebrate? I think that really matters. Okay, you've been listening to Marcus Child, Nice But Dim. I've always been thick, but as long as you're nice, that's the main thing. That's what my father said to me. He was a pencil salesman from Tooting, actually a Cockney, proper. And my mother was a typist all her life. And all I'm saying is I had really working class, grafting parents, you know, from an urban environment. And my dad always used to say, you'll always be thick, but as long as you're nice, you know, you might get away with it. My mother used to say, there's no brains in the blood, and you'll always be a C-stream boy. Some of you might remember O-levels. I said to my father, if I passed my O-levels, would you buy me Sir Clive Sinclair's black watch, the first liquid crystal display watch I'd seen in the Daily Mail? My dad said, Marcus, if you pass your O-levels, I'll buy you Big Ben, mate. It's not going to happen. So I took my exams. Now, there's another diagram here, if we can go to it, which I think is fundamental to all of the change we've been talking about. And it goes like this. How you talk to yourself has a direct impact on the state you're in. Now, the state we're in is the most important thing. You walk into a room, then as a leader, of course, you know people are going to be borrowing that state, being energized or drained by it. And there's something ever so important about us looking after ourselves. I said that. But if I arrived here this morning and said to myself, this is true, by the way, I have had COVID 3 weeks ago, and I still feel tired, and I've got this sore throat, and these people aren't going to like me anyway, and it's going to be a difficult day. Then if I did say that to myself, then I'm going to induce a state of nervousness and anxiety. And when I make my first mistake, because my state affects that, I make my first mistake, I'm going to say to myself, I knew this was going to go badly, which causes more anxiety, and round we go in a vicious circle. And I think this is a fundamental thing, because this could go the other way too, of course. If we speak well to ourselves, look forward to the day, believe that we can make things happen, choose to make the most of our dash, etc., then we're likely to get ourselves into a buzz-up state. And when you feel good in that way, you're likely to perform well. This is why people go to sports matches, really. In the end, I think they go to watch rugby or football, unconsciously believing that they can make a difference. You know, if we really roar our lungs out, we'll be a 16th man. And get behind the team, you might be running a marathon. And, I don't know, London Marathon or whatever, and you're coming out of the Blackwall Tunnel, and you might say to yourself, my legs have gone to jelly, I did all that training, and it's such a shame, a disappointment that after all that I'm going to have to walk the last bit, and my time's shot. And as you're coming out of the darkness of the tunnel, it might be you come into a crowd in the light, and somebody says, hey, 1075, lift your knees, you're all right, keep going. The person next to them joins in. Come on, 1075, you can do it. And before I knew it, there's a whole crowd of people going, 1075. I don't know what happened to me. Suddenly, I just got a new lease of life. And 4 miles later, I crashed across the line, passed out, but I don't know how I must have just got a second wind. But of course, there is something ever so nourishing about when somebody speaks into your self-talk. Well done, you. That's a really good idea. I believe it changes everything. And as a leader, as an influential person, as a parent, how you speak to other people, noticing it, labeling it, it might be kind of not very fashionable to do so, or becoming more so, but I think it's really important to nourish somebody else. Especially as a leader, remember what leaders affect and how they run the culture. Most leaders I meet aren't big egos. They're just decent people who've worked really hard and found themselves in a position of authority. I've now got a team of people, but no one's worried about what I say or do very much. Well, that research earlier said they do. My mum and dad spoke to me like that, and they were dear people. But I went to school, and I know I was a mouse. Sat in class, and I'm too thick to do this stuff. I remember the exam paper coming. You open the first page, and now they're going to find out how thick I am. The day of judgment, the uncontrollable shake of my right leg as I start to look at the first question and can't answer that one, which creates more of a state of panic, can't answer this one. So I'm just coming here to confess that when I took my O-levels, you can get A to an E, you can even get an F. It's actually clinically possible to get unclassified, where they write unclassified in full on your certificate, just in case you thought U stood for unlucky. And I managed to get unlucky in maths, in science, disaster. English, I was leaving school. But sometimes one person can change everything. And in my case, it was a teacher called Mr. Shannon. He said to me, we're going to go rock climbing. I think you ought to come. I said, where's that going to be? The Peak District, Stanage Edge. So there I was, a 16-year-old boy. There was one thing I could do. We don't need the camera anymore now, I think. There was one thing I was a skinny kid. I could climb trees like a monkey. And I thought, rock climbing sounds rather wonderful. I mean, it sounds like James Bond to me. I'd seen it on TV. We'd never had a family holiday. I'm not trying to paint a hard luck story. But the idea of going to a rock face would be something else. So I said I'd like to go. And you know, that day changed everything. Sometimes you can look back over your life and that was a moment. Mr. Shannon was climbing this wall on Stanage and then was going over the overhang and he fell off. He was lowered down. He took the harness off and said, where's Marcus? Marcus, put this harness on. You have a go. But sir, if you can't do it, if I can't do it, that means I can't do it yet. But that's got nothing to do with what you can do. Don't judge yourself by my standards. We're different people. So get on with it and enjoy yourself. So I went up this wall, over the lip of the overhang to the top. I wasn't even tired. And I just thought, how about that? He said, I knew it. You've got a gift. Stay at school. So he rigged it on the minibus journey home so that he sat next to me. I'm sort of pinned to the window. And then he said, stay at school. I'll set up a climbing club and you'll be world famous. I can't do that, sir. I'm thick. Well, you don't perform very well in class, but it's not that you're thick. And any kid could pass. Any kid could pass their O-levels. You've got to believe that. Unless there's something wrong with how they were wired, they could pass. just that most kids don't want to, or they get switched off, or they get boring teachers. There's no such thing as a boring subject, just a boring teacher. And they just don't want it. But if you wanted it, you could have it. I said, well, I can't come back to school, sir. I'm just too thick. So he came to our house. When would you stop? Mr. Shannon came to our house, awkward, sat on my mother and father's Draylon sofa, and had tea and biscuits, a teacher in our house like a parents' evening. And he says, explains to my dad says, well, if your teacher says you've got to go back to school, you can't join his climbing club unless you go back to school, retake your exams. So I went back to the humiliation of going down a year. Some of you might recognise that. I have to go down a year and study with the kids below, retake my O-levels, and also take 3 A-levels with the class that I should be in. So this was quite a heavy workload. Now this is where the story gets a bit weird. I'd go to school to start again in September. On Friday night, Mr. Shannon becomes Tony. And I jump in his Renault 5 and we go off to the Peak District. Would this be allowed these days? But it wouldn't be, of course it wouldn't be. But I should say it was, well, a happily married man at this point, just in case. Anyway, but you know, on Friday night, I'd go climbing with Mr. Shannon. I'd come back on Monday morning, on Sunday night, exhausted. And I wouldn't have done any homework. And that went on for week after week. But I did become a proper climber in that time, just 2 months. But also, after 2 months, we take the resits for O-levels. And how do you explain this? Because I can hardly explain it. Those unclassifieds became A's and B's in 2 months after 16 years of abject failure. And I just look back at it and think, I wonder if when this goes north, kids are saying, you're a child, you do that climbing thing. You can do one-arm pull-ups. Let's have a look at that. My self-esteem must have grown. And I think when you get good at one thing, it overspills into all sorts of other things too. Because in the end, you see, I didn't come here to boast here. I just wanted to kind of bear witness to the material. But I did coach the British climbing team. I became a proper climber. But more importantly, I said to Mr. Shannon, I'd like to be like you. How'd you get to be a teacher? Because you see, you've opened doors for me, and I'd like to do the same thing for other kids. It's been brilliant. I said, well, go to university. Where'd you go to university, sir? Cambridge, he said. That's where my story ends, by the way. But seriously, I think, trying to post-rationalise this, I think I saw him and thought, I can climb better than Mr. Shannon. If I can do that better than him, then maybe I can learn better than him too. I don't know what equivalence I did, but I did go to Cambridge. I did get a distinction at Cambridge. And this is just light years away from where Mum and Dad ever said we'd go. And at Cambridge, we met Professor, you think I'm mad, Professor Anthony Adams. He was a Marxist. And he's saying that, do you know, all kids can achieve in any area you care to mention. They can all do it. Just have to switch them on. How dare you be sarcastic to a child when they make a mistake in class? You know, or try to belittle them. This is the next generation. This is evolution. Next generation's brighter than this one. That's how it works. They're going to be brighter than you, innately. So you dare be rude to them, humiliate them. If they're not concentrating, that's because you haven't won their concentration yet. Teach better. So that's what we learned. But by the way, at that time, Dr. Roger Sperry had got the Nobel Prize for Medicine for 25 years of research into the brain. And he'd come up with some revelations. And they didn't give that thing away lightly. But Cambridge was full of this, you know, Sperry's theory. And Sperry's theory goes a bit like this, but I'll pause for a second. Would you tell the person next to you or on your table where you are physically when you get good ideas? That's what we're going to do. We're going to try this. Well, let's make this go. Actual physical location, where are you when good ideas pop into your head? Ah, that's the one. Actually, physically, share that for a moment. Where are you? We'll go back. If you'd shout out, that would be really good. Just feel free to lamp in. But physically speaking, where are we when the good ideas come? Happy place. And where might that be for you, specifically, anybody?
Play music.
Play music. When you play music, ideas come. Lovely. In the shower or outside, anywhere outside.
On a bike.
Thank you.
In the car.
Thank you.
Milking parlour.
Do you know, my father-in-law is going to be really pleased that I elicited that from somebody in a workshop. Good stuff. Milking parlour, anywhere else. Middle of the night in bed. And sorry? Walking the dog. those are the typical places people say. With the outside, sometimes people say on the loo too. But maybe I'll just put that on there just for anybody who did say it but didn't dare say it. When I'm cutting the grass, washing the car, making food, or ironing clothes, other typical places. But what have these places got in common? Autopilot. Yeah, there's a sense in which you're sort of switched off from real concentration of import. Anything else? Right, not at work. Could. Maybe that's not the case here, but not at work. And reflection. Anything else they've got in common? Time. Yeah, you've got a bit of time, haven't you? A bit of time. It's not a pressured environment. No phone. So distractions, yeah, but you've got time to reflect. You've got no phone. Anything else? One other thing I'm looking for.
You relax.
Relaxed, yes.
You're by yourself.
Right. You would hope so, wouldn't you? Here and here. But yeah, okay. Okay. Good stuff. Brilliant. Well, see, Sperry, what's happened with Roger Sperry's work was that when he wired up a brain, we're going to this place now. Oh, what's happened there? Here we go. When you wire, this is old hat now, but I'm just going to be faithful to the story of 1981, when Sperry said, when you wire up a brain and ask somebody to do mathematics or English or science, the core subjects of the curriculum, then you see most of the lights are flashing in the left hemisphere, which is in charge of logic, linear, sequential, analytical, measurement, reason, rationality. Stuff that, so I don't care what you think about Romeo and Juliet, but I would like you to give me a structured essay, which has got a good beginning, middle, and end, where you use grammar and spelling accurately. You support your argument with quotation. You prove your judgments to be correct by defending your argument in a structured way. And in maths, use numbers and use logic and apply them with reason. In science, prove how cause creates effect. And we work that brain like a muscle at school. Even if you're not good at it, they want you to be better at it, and we keep working that muscle. And in business, how can you prove it? Give me the judgment, give me the reasons, give me the rationality. How's the budget going to work? And we work that brain really strongly through our childhood, and then later in life, it's all about those kinds of measurements. Whereas the flaky stuff, art, drama, music and movement. Did you ever have that at your school? They play a piece of music and say, imagine you're an oak tree and grow like an oak tree and hold it there when the music stops. And if you've forgotten your kits, you're in your plimsolls and underpants. Or was that my school only? But Mr. Shannon again, don't say it. But anyhow, that's going on. And Professor Adams is saying to us, the people who really change the world are polymaths. They're capable in both hemispheres. We've not been working this muscle at school, just the left hemisphere really strongly. And the people who've changed the world, though, are in both camps. Now, this is less politically correct than people would like, but I'm not going to change it because this is what we heard in 1981. But read about Einstein. So I'm not going to teach you English literature, says Professor Adams. I want you to read about Einstein. And Einstein, we find, was a concert-level violinist as well as a mathematician we know him to have been. Look at Thomas Edison. So they're all male examples, that's what we're asked to read. But look at Thomas Edison, wonderful scientist. But when he died, he left a gallery of watercolours behind. Kenneth Grahame writes Wind in the Willows, a beautiful lyrical text, and poetic to say the least. And his name's on the Bank of England pound notes as chief cashier. Lewis Carroll writes something as bonkers as Alice in Wonderland. What was he taking? Whilst being professor of maths at Oxford. Leonardo da Vinci paints Mona Lisa whilst designing helicopters before their time. Wouldn't it be marvellous to use both brains, to get both brains going, when we've been teaching just one, really? And I'm thinking, yes, okay, that's all rather good. But the most important slide I can show you is this next one. And it looks a bit boring. They're all coming to you, by the way. But it looks a bit boring, but it goes like this. They used a cephalogram. And a cephalogram measures brain waves and the frequency of a brain wave. And the electric pulses measured in hertz cycles per second. But all we need to know really is that when you're wide awake, you're in your left hemisphere. and the brainwaves are moving at quite a fast cycle, which they just gave a random Greek letter to, beta brainwaves. But as soon as you go into that glazy-eyed, half-asleep state that you're in now, sir, have been in for quite some time, you're in your right hemisphere, and the brainwaves have slowed down a bit. And where you've been, madam, for most of the morning, in light sleep, is right hemisphere again, and in deep sleep, it's still the right. But please notice what's going on there. As soon as we leave the... Where are you when you get your best ideas? Listening to music, on my bike, eyes glazed, in the shower, you have to actually close your eyes. As soon as you close your eyes, you access right hemisphere. That's where creativity, imagination, lateral thinking all happens. No wonder you come up with the ideas there. But please stay with the thread. How many hours a day are we in our right hemisphere? And we sleep, but the brain doesn't. It keeps going. And then the next question is, what's going on in there? What's it working on? And I think that's the place of real interest. What's going on in the right hemisphere all those hours? The answer seems to be the right brain is trying to answer the unfinished questions of the left. The right brain is preoccupied with the major preoccupations of the left. So if you watch Hannibal Lecter before you go to sleep tonight, or any other horror movie, I don't know any others really, just how about Blair Witch Project or something like that, see some horror movie before you go to sleep at night, what's likely to happen? You have a nightmare. But notice what's going on. The last thing that you take to bed with you is horror. It's a visual of horror. It's a sound of horror. And it's a feeling attached to it, shock or surprise or whatever. So it's a compound suggestion in 3 senses, just like stories work the same way. That's why stories are so potent. They're multisensory, and people remember them really well. But imagine that. You take that to bed with you, the last compound important thought, and as you then go off to sleep, then what happens during the night? We might have a nightmare. Why? Because the intuition's working in the unconscious. Intuition comes from the Latin word intuare, which literally means teach oneself. So we go to bed with fear, we teach ourselves fear, wake up with a nightmare. But then again, there's no surprise when you think about how COVID went. The last thing you see before you go to sleep at night, maybe the numbers of death, people dying in the UK today on the news at 10. We've been reinforced at 5 o'clock with more fear. And we've been on our own for a while to whir away our thoughts. Can't even go outside, and so we're just stuck in this place. No wonder so many people had difficult night's sleep. But I want you to really apprehend that that's how confidence is grown or lost. See, if you go to bed fearing something, some more news about the levy or whatever it might be, and more stories from other people about what's not gone well, or somebody tears a strip off you, tells you you're rubbish or whatever, then if we don't do something else, that'll start to be part of the cycle, and we'll end up losing our confidence, or not being as confident as we might. So I think there's something ever so important. How do you really hold a belief? This isn't like new, really. If you want a religious group might want you to follow a path. How do we follow our path to a place which is better than this one? Well, we don't just say it once. Pray. First thing in the morning, last thing at night. Just when you go into alpha brainwaves. In Buddhism, it's meditation. In other hypnotherapy, get your patient in some kind of trance in that place, then make the suggestion. We know how this goes. That's why TV advertising still works. They keep doing it after all these years. Get somebody in a half asleep, half awake state, and then make the image, put images in there, strong visuals, sounds which go with it, and feelings attached. And you can see how you can really convince people. So this is our chance to convince ourselves. Ergo, after this long explanation, that's why goals work. That's why pictures work. When you have a picture, it's astonishing how it goes, because if that's the one you keep on talking about, keep on thinking about, share with others, they reinforce it with you, then that's the stuff that goes on in the unconscious. And the unconscious won't rest until it gets an answer. And it'll come up with all sorts of lateral creative ideas because it's trying to answer the question, which at the moment is impossible. That's how the thing works. And I think, therefore, with sharing a picture, you can see that. And if you've got a lot of people in a company deciding, well, it's all about making dare to care, yes, I can, do the right thing, come to life. And it's about creating a breath of fresh air. And by the way, when we finish this, we're going to go to Barcelona. And they go to bed dreaming about that. You can see how you can get a lot of people aligned and believing something and going for it. Do you ever listen to Desert Island Discs? Some of you are going, he really is a loser. But it's a Radio 4 show, and on Desert Island Discs, all they do is put a famous person in the hot seat and say to them, tell us your life story by the piece of music, or the 8-piece of music you'd take to a desert island if you sent it there. And if you fancy a few moments in the car of being a bit uplifted, just go through the archive of all the desert island discs that have ever happened, and you could just pick one of the favourite people that you might like. Clarkson's on there, actually. It's quite funny. But Clive Woodward's is a really strong one. Tom Hanks is very powerful. I quite like David Beckham's, actually. Mary Berry's is really strong. By the way, my father-in-law, Ronald Cook, was the first producer of Desert Island Discs, and I had to listen to thousands of them, married to his daughter for 23 years. So I'm a bit of an anorak when it comes to Desert Island Discs. However, this curious thing is, if you ever listen to them, Ellen MacArthur's one, she says, I was 6. I said to my mum, I'm going to sail around the world. She said, you can't do that. We're landlocked. You've never seen the sea. How do you know you'd like it? I just think I would. Well, how could you afford a boat? I'm going to save up my pocket money. It's the picture of a little girl. But I wouldn't mind if it was just one. I told you I've listened to loads of them. Denise Lewis is 6. She sees Sebastian Coe and Daley Thompson win gold medals at the Olympics. Says to her mum, on TV, says to her mum, I'm going to go to the Olympics. You can't do that. You're a fatso. And fatsos can't run. Well, I might be a fatso now, but one day I'll be able to run. He was a fatso, James Corden, but he tried to get a part in some show and failed and failed and failed and ended up living above a chip shop. But he said, I decided that I was going to be a performer when I was 4. I was in church and I was asked to read something, and that's when I made my mind up. But after all those failures, living above the fish and chip shop, because they kept saying to him, you don't look right. In that case, I'm going to write a play and write a script, which I will look right for. We'll call that Gavin and Stacey. And that's Kath Kidston, age 6. It seemed like a magic number. She tore the leaves off a bush in her garden, gave them to her mum and said, imagine these are pound notes. And would you like to buy objects from my shop? Why are we playing this game, darling? Oh, because one day I'm going to have shops. Lots of shops. Don't be so silly. We're not that kind of family. Now she's got more than 50. One of my favourites, which I didn't think I'd like, actually, Bear Grylls, you know that bloke who'll eat anything? But I saw it, here it goes, I'll just listen to it. But it's actually one of my favourites because it really conforms to the theory. He said, I was 8 years of age and my dad came into my bedroom and put a poster on the wall of Mount Everest. And he was so excited about it. He said, imagine being on the summit of Everest. You'll have conquered the world. You'd feel like a tiger, 100-mile-an-hour winds. You could see the curvature of the earth from that height. He said, my dad was so enthusiastic about it, I couldn't get it out of my head. And when I went to sleep on it that night, all I could think of was being on the summit of Everest. Isn't it interesting, actually, that doctors often have children who become doctors, architects become architects, because my mum was, and in this case, my dad was so enthusiastic about it that it really got into my system. He says, he might be lying, that for the next 8 years, every night when I went to sleep, the last thing I'd see was the summit of Everest. If that's true, that's really serious auto-conditioning every single night, like saying your prayers to Mount Everest. He said after 8 years of doing it, he decided he wanted to join the SAS instead. So the poster came down, he put military things in his bedroom. But when he got into the special forces, he jumped out of an aircraft. I didn't know this about him, and he fell, the parachute didn't open, and he fell to the desert, broke his back in 3 places, and was paralysed for a year and a half. He said it was a really serious kind of lockdown, where everything, he couldn't move anything from the neck down. And after 6 months of this, a really dark place, he said the doctors came to him and showed him a photograph. There's your spine, broken in 3 places. We knew that. What we didn't know is, look at the cord. It's not leaking. It's under pressure, but it's not leaking. What this really means is, if you don't move, say, for another year, your bones might fuse straight and take some pressure off the cord. It might be then that the cord frees up and you get some feeling in your fingers and toes again. It's possible. Is it likely? No, it's not likely. But we're just saying there's a chink of light here. Dad, do you remember the poster when I was a little boy? Everest. Could you get that wrinkled poster out of the attic, put it above my bed? That's where I'm going when I get out of here. Now, his mates from the SAS, they'd turn up and say, don't torture yourself. This is too much to ask. But and they're tigers. But none of his nurses laughed. He said, the nurses, they all saw this and cheered me on because they understand the importance of hope. They've seen this before. But there he is, the youngest person Britain ever produced to climb to the top of Everest. And I just don't think that's a coincidence. But I do want to ask the question, how far might we dare to really ask something which we don't know how to achieve yet? I wonder what Harry Kane was thinking when he left that meeting. Did you see that on social media? In 2005, 11 years of age, Harry Kane meets David Beckham, together with a girl who's a friend from school. And 16 years later, he's the captain and she's his wife. I wonder what pictures they were making on the way home from that meeting. So, I left Cambridge, you can imagine, just completely full of it, pumped. And our lecturer said, you've been to a place of privilege, and whatever you do, I don't want you to go to an independent school. You go to a place where you exercise this privilege properly, where you go and help people in underprivilege. And so we left and went to Inner London Educational Authority schools. I went to a school in Essex. And I said to my class, this is your O-level year. This really matters. And I want you to do this brilliantly. I failed all mine terribly, like a car crash, but I got them second time. Just get yours the first, will you? So let's get started. This is going to be a brilliant time. My name's Marcus Child. You call me sir. I'm only 22, but let's get going. And one of these kids said, are you mental, mate? Most of them wouldn't put the cigarettes out. You know, I couldn't get to sit still. And I went to my first staff meeting with spit all down my back. It wasn't very easy. But Professor Adams said, you have to keep on going. So you just take the abuse, and the more abuse you get, it's actually quite good, because if you come back smiling, then eventually they might think, this bloke really means it. And maybe it's even true. But I said to them, this is how the brain works, and let's work this all out and verify this with your own experience before we do any English, because I want you to pass your O-levels. Nobody passes in our school. Now, 7 kids out of 30 do. That's what they did last year, so if you're going to argue with me, be accurate with your information. Then, but anyway, it caused a right old humdinger. But for 2 weeks, I shared with them everything I know about how the brain works and asked them to contribute. And I think they got it. But after 2 weeks of it, I said to them, before we do anything else now and go into English, just tell me what your picture is. You understand the theory. What's yours? And eventually one boy said, I'm going to play football. I said, nice. Who are you going to play for? Ipswich Town. I said, you've missed the whole point. This was about having a goal that you'd be proud of. And when you've achieved it, you'd feel like you've done something. He came back, I'm going to be captain of my country. I said, that's more like it. Who's next? And I reckon I got a picture from every kid. But I asked this boy, and all of them, get a photograph, in this case, of a player in your national strip. Get a photograph of your own head, this was 1985 then, and stick it on the top of that body, because we didn't have digital technology to help, and go to sleep with that in mind. Put that above your bed. And everybody, picture of yourself in that place. Sleep on it. And I believe everyone told me they'd done it. I certainly saw them made, but I can't verify it because I didn't go into their bedrooms to check, just like Mr. Shannon never came into mine, okay? All done. Righto. So that was that. But you know, in 2019, I did a talk in Lazard International Investment Bank. And this man came up to me at the end. So remember, 7 kids out of 30 were supposed to pass. Actually, I taught 142 kids in the 3 years I was there, and only 3 didn't get grade C. So I think the method worked. But this man came up to me in Lazard, posh bank in Mayfair, and he said to me, Marcus, I've been waiting 30 years for this conversation. I said, how do you mean? He said, I'm Gerard Veerman. Do you remember me? I was in your class. I said, well, I do remember you, and I can see your face, that's you. He said, yeah. He said, you know, I left one of those lessons, and my dad used to tease me terribly because I was rubbish at maths. And he worked as a cashier in a high street bank. And I decided one day, I'm going to leave school, and I'm going to go and join one of those banks in London. And I'm going to run one, and then I'll be able to tease my dad about how crap he was at maths. And now I run Lazard here. I reckon I've done way better than my father, and my picture came true. That's why I asked for you to come and talk today. And when you come next time, I'll get Matthew Kelly to come along. Remember Matthew Kelly? He was in the same class, and he was also a would-be loser. But he's now managing director of Bula, the Swiss multinational, works around the corner. And he really did it, Marcus. And Dave Nichols, remember Dave Nichols, in the same class too? Well, he was rather shy, didn't say very much. He's now Nestlé's sales director for Europe. He's done rather well for himself. Do you know, we keep meeting up, though. We keep meeting up. We've met ever since. Just like we call ourselves a band of brothers. You know, we drink together and tease each other and egg each other on, but share business ideas as well. And it's been a brilliant journey. And and we still meet up with Matty, because Matthew Holland did say he'd be captain of Ipswich, and he was captain of Ireland. And when Jamie's in the same class, then it's all starting to go wild. But we all stuck together. I went to school with you. If you can do it, I must be able to do it. And I just think there's something really powerful about the collective. Other people being alongside you. And what are we capable of achieving? We've got no idea yet. The system said these kids weren't able to achieve, but who knows? When our moment might come as well. I've only ever worked with one woman in rowing. I don't know rowing, but I was doing this job working with Bank Paribas, and this woman was having mental health issues. Doctor said, get outside. And I said to her, so what's your goal? She said, I'm going to learn to row. I said, that's not a goal. I live near the Thames, Putney, and I see the girls rowing, but yeah, that's not a goal. Because I could achieve that. Learning to row is something which most people could achieve. You need something which you can't do. Here's the big point of the morning, really. If you aim for something which you know you can do, if it's a smart action plan, specific, measurable, achievable, if it's achievable, then all you need is logic and rationality and reason to make it so. All you need is half a brain. If you want to get the whole thing to work, you have to ask something which you can't do yet. And most people don't dare. They don't dare because of all sorts of history and that kind of stuff, but they don't dare. They did it once, they made it happen once, and they don't dare again. And why is that? Because they've got an overdeveloped left hemisphere. You know, we're rational, reasonable. I'll give you all the reasons why that won't work. They overthink it, and before we know it, so they've talked themselves out of daring. And that's what I came here to do, really, just to stir you up and say, what's possible? Chantal, come on, that's not a goal. Give me a goal which you can't do yet. Well, what might that be? I don't know. Well, win a race. Where might I win a race? Well, you tell me. Henley-on-Thames. How about that? Winning at Henley-on... Go bigger. When's the next Commonwealth Games coming? Oh, Marcus, don't be so silly. I sent her a gold pen with Go for Gold engraved down the side. I'm not mucking about. But I think this might create an obligation vacuum. Crikey, I've got this pen. I better do something to deserve it. But there's Chantal winning a gold at the next Commonwealth Games 18 months later. That's a bit of a record, by the way. You know, never been in a boat before, 18 months later gets a gold. You don't seem very impressed. Oh, well, do you know, I had a builder working on our house, and he saw all these pictures of people I worked with. He said, what do you do? I told him. He said, I've got a kid in our street who wants to be a motorcyclist, and superbikes and this kind of stuff. He's a lovely lad, hasn't got any money, but I wonder if you might get him started. So I said, sure, bring him along. So Dan used to sit there, and I'd say, Dan, come on, what's the picture? And I explained all of this in piecemeal chunks for a couple of weeks. And when we got to the picture, he was a bit vague. I said, well, how about Silverstone, MotoGP, Schumacher moment with a bottle of champagne? He said, well, that might work, but for me, it's always, here's the line, it's always been the Isle of Man TT. I said, why didn't you tell me earlier? But there's Dan Hegarty winning at the Isle of Man TT. And there was a man in one of my workshops who said, my daughter, she's given up swimming. She's always wanted to swim. She's trained really hard. They train madly in swimming, really early mornings and stuff like that. And she gets to 16 years of age, and she's got this coach who's abusing her, verbally. And he said, she's broken, and she's given up, and I can't persuade her to go back in the pool. But you seem persuasive. I wonder if you'd meet with her. So I said, I'll meet with her. I actually spent a whole Saturday with her. And said to her, come on then, and this is how it all works, and override the stuff that he... Do you know, lovely, she decided to say to herself, all the time he was giving her abuse, she'd block it out and say to herself instead, I'm a swimmer, I'm a winner, I'm Becky Cook. I'm a swimmer, I'm a winner, I'm Becky Cook. And that was her winning her second gold in the Commonwealths 2 years later. But I do think, well, as you can tell, that making the picture is a massive, massive reason for success. And without it, then we let other people's stuff get into our heads. And that's the trouble. I wonder whether I should pause for breath for a second and just give you a moment just to process what you've heard there. Just a couple of moments just to what do you make of all that lunacy? And then would you, maybe you can ask a couple of questions after that, and I'll finish with something which I think is rather uplifting. If you could look like you're still interested and still here, that would be great. But what did you make of that? I think I'll just charge on a bit further, if that's okay. When I left that school and those kids, Essex County Council had seen the numbers, and they said, would you become a teacher trainer? So I went round Essex speaking to teachers, trying to explain what happened in that school and the whole method. And, you know, they were the toughest days. I'd be speaking to teachers like this, and they'd be folded arms saying, well, that's a lovely story, but it wouldn't happen in this school, and the reasons why. And they'd give all that left brain reasoning as to why it wouldn't happen. And they were really difficult. And in the end, I decided not to do that anymore. But somebody said to me, you need to meet Alan Parker. And Alan Parker was the newly appointed chief executive of Marriott Hotels. I guess you know Marriott's. This was in 1996. And Alan Parker, on a piece of paper in Luton, in his head office, said, I want to make Marriott Britain's favourite hotel company. I've been to Harvard, and I've learnt all about the importance of having a vision, and my vision's Britain's favourite hotel company. And I said, this is me masquerading now as a management consultant. I thought I'd better ask something intelligent. So I said, well, first of all, when would you like this for? It was 1996. He said, by the year 2000. I said, why? He said, because it's a round number. Please notice the random nature of goal setting. I said, OK, how do you measure favourite? He said, that's easy. It's about money in the end. See, they'll judge me as a great chief executive or not, according to how much profit we make. So in the end, I want us to be favourite for investors. And at Hilton, our biggest rivals, make £11,000 profit per room. And we'd have to beat that. He said, but if you're a chief executive and all you talk about is money, that's like playing tennis with the eye on the scoreboard. If we look after our guests properly, then they'll buy more, come back and tell others, and the money comes in. But that's not the end of the story. Come to the toilets with me. I thought, here we go again. But we go into the Slough Marriott hotel toilets. And as we go into the toilets there, he says, look at these loos. 5-star, brass, marble, fragrant air. It's wonderful. Now let's go back of house. I dare you to use these toilets. That was the last time we were allowed to call it back of house. But they were disgusting, broken, horrific, and stank like nothing else. He said, that's how we treat our associates. That's Marriott's word for employees. We treat them like dirt. And we expect them to look after our guests and do 5-star service. He said, what I really want to do is to enable these people to have a brilliant time at work. And if you got those people right, then they'd look after the guests look after the money, and then we've got more money to plough into the associate experience. So it's all about this team, really. And I need an idealist. I've heard about you. I wonder if you might help. Help my team leaders and supervisors really look after the front line. And if they did that properly, this might change everything. Would you have a guess? How many people they churned in a year? 300 people in a hotel? 74 hotels? Would you guess the percentage churn annually? It was staggering, 67%. So he said, think of the money we'd save if we just looked after these people. And when we finish looking after them, or by the way, because they're leaving, we need to go to Poland now and get people from Eastern Europe to come and, because we treat these people like they're this big just because they clean toilets and carry food. But everyone could be more. So would you have we'll measure this properly. I want to get a measure on everything. So net promoter score for our guests. And Apple's was, at its highest, 62. These guys were going for 70. And I want to do an associate opinion survey to see how engaged people are. I'd like to get into the Sunday Times top 100 companies. And Hilton are 31. And I want us to be better than that. Let's be under 15 by the time we get to 2000. And so would you help? And they had a balanced scorecard. It was good. And it was a traffic light system. Every single hotel had, if you're hitting target, you get an amber. Beating it, green. Missing, red. Same here and same here. So the idea is that we build a league table. I didn't like that idea, by the way, but I was wrong. A league table where you see one hotel at green, 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 one at the bottom, red, 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 but we keep on talking about it. Every month it's like seeing how your position changes in the Premier League. People are interested in that. The left brain wants to chase a number. Please remember that as well, by the way. The left brain wants a number. And so I think you need two things, really. A proper goal out there, an exciting picture of making it so, but a number to prove it, so the thing's chiming really nicely. But anyway, that's it. Marcus, would you run workshops? And I'd just been a teacher, so all I knew for this business was how you might get people excited, making pictures, being ambitious, and improving things for customers. And we use this, what I think was a really neat tool. I mean, fantastic thing. If you imagine you're going to a hotel today, a 4-star hotel, what's the basic thing they're offering you? At its absolute core, what's the basic thing you'd be phoning up for? Do you have a bed? Right, so you're going to go there for a bed. What things would you expect to have, but you wouldn't ask for down the phone? A duvet, thank you for that. You might need to shout loudly here, because pillow, Wi-Fi. Your own bathroom. See, people show you their priorities, don't they, when they answer this question? Yep. Own bathroom, yes, good stuff. Other things? Kettle, curtains, that somebody was woken up last night by the light. Yep, good stuff. Quality shower. TV. Right, toilets, yes, right. We're getting... Anything else you'd expect to find in a 4-star? Clean. Right, clean, yes, again. Minibar. And what sort of price would you expect to pay for the minibar? Extortionate minibar, righto. So there's ring 2, what's expected. And then the third ring, wow, beyond expectations, what stuff could they do which would make you go, crikey, for our wedding anniversary, we're coming back here. What would you say they could do if they did would make you go, wow? Hot tub, okay. Let's go there, hot tub, nice. Pardon me? Big biscuits, is it? Did you say big biscuits? Well, anyway, I'll put biscuits, but that shows somebody's priority as well. Good stuff. Right. Robe, slippers, and origami cows. So the towels into cows or swans. Okay, right, so they're doing stuff with your towels. That would be a wow for you, madam. All right. What else might be even bigger wow? Go mad. Welcome drink. What sort of drink would you like, sir? Righto, so we've got bubbles on arrival. Right, flowers, okay, etc. And so we implied this thing as the 3-ring model. What's the basic thing, what's expected, and what's wow? And it just produces a really good creative thing. Now, especially over time, especially if you do it like this. When you arrive at the hotel, what's expected and what might be a wow? When we arrived here, what we're expecting to see in the car park and what could have been extra or what was a wow. Like a flared car parking space or generous car parking spaces or somebody to meet you and show you the way here, that kind of stuff. And then when you get to the front desk, what's expected, what might be a wow. Across the lobby, a front desk there, when you get your room key, what's expected, what might be a wow. They write the name of the room you're going to stay in here, so that and it's handwritten, so it's personalised as an early touch at Heaton House, for example. And but what could they do in every aspect of this? By the way, today's wow is tomorrow's expectation. I think that's interesting, because effectively, if you do this here, you've decided what the expectations are, and we have to deliver every one of these 100% of the time before we even go into flowers and biscuits, etc. I mean, who needs their towel made into a swan if there's no hot water? So we've got to get the basics right first, and when we've got those, well, then we earn the right to be creative and come up with this stuff. But one of the things I learnt was that the more money you throw at the wow, the faster it gravitates into the centre. The more human the wow, the longer the shelf life as a wow. The small things we do end up being the really important ones, the ones that really, really stick. And at Marriott, we spent millions putting flat-screen TVs into every bedroom, thinking that was a really cool thing to do as the technology arrived. It was, but it goes straight into the expected ring. I'm not going to take it off the wall again. But when you say nice things, remember someone's name, and do those small acts of kindness, generosity, etc., those are the ones. In fact, at Bredsall Priory, I was doing a workshop there, and a gentleman came to a session and said, I've had this customer, they phoned up this morning saying, my wife and I have our wedding anniversary tonight in your restaurant, and I just wanted you to know that it's an important day. I wouldn't like you to do anything special for it, and no need to throw anything on, but I just want you to know it matters today. Certainly so, we'll look forward to seeing you at 7:30, and that'll be a lovely evening. Have a great day in the meantime. The guy then comes to the room and says, what do we do with this? When we arrive at the table, what's going to be the wow for them? And all I'm saying is the first things you think of are always the cliches. You know, when they arrive at the table, well, a bottle of champagne, or maybe a cake, or a card, or a candlelit supper, that kind of thing, we go there. But by the way, the general manager's saying, we haven't got any money to spend on this. Do it for nothing. And actually, it's a really good way of asking the question, because if you do it for nothing, you've got to do an act of discretion and effort and proper thinking. Somebody then goes, why don't we just download the front page of the Times 25 years ago? If this is our 25th anniversary, that'll be the day. and perhaps give him the sports page, her the front page, because they won't have anything to talk about after 25 years, and they'll have something to read at least, and a post-it note on there. But it's always those things. So we did that really thoroughly. And as a business process, I think it's a really, anyone who's got a customer, what are they expecting? What more can we do? And if you keep that going with post-it notes or whatever, then over time, it generates all sorts of fresh thinking. But at Marriott, I trained that in and all this stuff that I've mentioned today, and just shared that with everybody. And but these were 5-day programs. Could you imagine this for 5 days? You know, at Ashridge Business School, arrive here on Sunday night and Friday night say goodbye. I mean, count yourselves lucky, you know. But after 5 days of all this, I thought, how do I close this workshop? And I thought, I'll do what I used to do as a teacher. Here's an idea. Would you write a letter to yourself? It says, dear, and then your own name. And then all the things you'd love to make come true in this next year of your life. And in your home life, for your health, for your learning, for your family, for your holidays, for your business, everything that matters to you. Write it in uplifting stuff, but put things in there that you can't do. And then sign your name at the bottom, fold it up, put it in an envelope, and then write the address you want it sent to in a year's time and give it to me. And I'll put a stamp on it and send it to you in a year, and you can see how well you did. But please test the theory. If you write stuff you know you can do, then you won't be surprised when the letter comes. Ask stuff which is absolutely out there, and that might well test the theory. So that's what they did. Handed me the letters, and that was that. On the first workshop, though, not telling any fibs, the first workshop, it was a pilot. One man said, can I tell you what's in my letter? I said, Carl, it's private. Keep it to yourself, that's all right. Yeah, but if I tell everybody, I'll have to do it, Marcus. I said, all right then. So this is 28 years of age, Carl, assistant accounts manager in the Slough Marriott. I've written here, I'm going to be so famous for my work in business, I'm going to be on the front page of the Financial Times. Regularly. Am I thinking big enough, do you reckon, Marcus? Well, Carl, it's a start. Good stuff. Now, next to him, because she thinks it's show and tell, is Anna. And Anna's a maid. She started as a waitress and is now working in housekeeping. She said, I'm thick as 2 short planks, Marcus, but I've written here, I'm going to be general manager. But what chance of that? I said, well, you wrote it. Why'd you write it? Because if I was general manager, I'd treat girls like me with dignity. In housekeeping, we're this big. I said, well, nice one, Anna. Go ahead. She said, I can't do this. But you've written it, Anna. It's your choice. And so, come on, everybody, let's make our way. And then somebody else piped up. Philippa said, look, I don't need any goals. I love my husband. I love my job. I don't need to change anything. So I've written in my letter just to keep everything the same. Is that all right? But I guess it's been expensive, us coming to Ashridge for 5 days, so I better do something. My little daughter, Katie, she's only 8, she wants to play golf. And, you know, I've said to her, you can't play golf, girls can't play golf, you're not coordinated, it's too expensive. But after this, I'm going to get her a set of golf clubs. And when she goes to sleep at night, I'm going to tell her how much I love her, so that that will sink into her system. I'll ask her to think about the good things about the today and looking forward to tomorrow, and I'll tell her how good she could be at golf. I'll get her some clubs, and I'll let you know if anything changes. You're not going to be surprised by any of this, but anyway, let's have a go. But I called the program The Spirit to Serve, and there's Carl. He wrote the goal down at 28, and at 32, Chief Executive of Premier Inn. 2 years later, Chief Executive of De Vere Hotels. 4 years later, number 2 at Marks & Spencer's, and just finished a career as Chief Executive of Gala Coral, been on the front page of the FT 3 times. I mean, this is mad, isn't it? But even better, Anna. That's a news press from Bahrain, running 2 5-star hotels concurrently, still not qualified in anything other than needlework and pottery. But even better, 6 weeks later, the letter hasn't come. 6 weeks later, Philip had written her letter. I get the front page of the Daily Express and other newspapers sent to my house from Philippa. And there's her daughter, Katie, the youngest person on earth to score a hole-in-one on a proper golf course. They say to her, how did you do it? Her reply, isn't that what you're supposed to do every shot? I was aiming for the hole. What were you doing? And you know, these programs, I ran a 5-day program 25 times. And Alan Parker said to me, you probably need a gopher, somebody to help you out with all the teas and coffees. So we've got this lad, he's not very bright, but he's a nice chap. Wonder if he could run and get the teas and coffees for you. So Gareth was my gopher for all these workshops. And has anyone been to the Ned Hotel in London? It's outrageous. I mean, next time you're in the city, each of these pillars in the reception is £8 million worth of jade. I mean, it's just outrageous. There's a swimming pool on the roof. If you ever saw Goldfinger, Bond comes out of the bullion vaults of Fort Knox. Those are the actual bullion vaults in the base of the bank, as was. And gin bar now, some of you might be interested in. But it was an amazing place. I went there in 2019, and I was met by the chief executive. It's Gareth, the gopher. He said, Marcus, I mean, shame on me. He said, Marcus, you never asked me to write a letter because I was the gopher running around. But on the third program, I wrote one anyway. And I saw your name on the guest list, so I thought, this is an opportunity, and this is the letter I wrote that came back to me. I thought you might be interested. And the top line, Dear Gareth, one day you'll run the finest hotel anyone runs in Britain. He said, what do you think to my house? I said, I've seen better Premier Inns, mate. But anyway, I'll finish this just by saying, you know the results are going to be good here. But we were the Sunday Times, again, number 3 company to work for. We got this to 13%, we got this to 72%, but we didn't make the money. We didn't make the money. Hilton won. Because Hilton came up with a new offering. Our strategy didn't work. They were nimble. They came up with a new thing called Travel Lodge. And Travel Lodge was ever such a cool idea. £33.50 a night. We're all playing in the 5-star market, and they just created blue water. But Alan Parker said, just like Alex Ferguson did, Alex Ferguson said, Manchester United have never lost a match. Just sometimes we ran out of time. Talk about spin. And Alan Parker said, the picture is not going to change. We are going to do this, but we just need a bit more time. So we replied, and we built Travel Inn, which we converted to Premier Inn. And what was so amazing was, we're then opening 10 new hotels a week, roughly speaking. They're throwing them up, the building's going berserk. And of course, where are all these people going who are all exuberant now? I could have a new life, I could be a manager, I'm going to do this. Well, now we're opening Premier Inns, there's plenty of space for you. Could these people who were frontline, they were only frontline workers, run hotels like that and be part of those hotels? And, as a list, I went to Anna Dowling's 50th birthday party. And she said to me, Marcus, do come to this, because I'm going to ask the class of 96, all the guys you trained, the frontline workers who are on that workshop to come. Because we stayed together, we still know each other. Social media has kept us in touch. And so we didn't make the money by 2000, but we did, nor 2002, we pushed it back. We got 2004, we did. We made 6 million profit in 96, 158 million in 2004. And so it took longer, but I think when you've got that head of steam and those people. But this was Anna Dowling's guest list. These were the front-line guys. I mean, look at that, exec HR director of Tata Steel, who was in the front line at Regent's Park Hotel. These guys, look at those chief executives who were in the front line, doing jobs which apparently they were just cannon fodder to do. Paula and Bertrand Dijou, he was a sous chef, and Paula was an exec assistant. They fell in love on the programme. I know it's an absolute catalogue of amazing things, but that's the truth of it. And I thought if I shared it with you today in terms of just the sheer number of people who have used this way of thinking, I think that's compelling, really. I've convinced myself, at least. Right, I'll finish just by saying, I'll start where I began, really. I was asked by a man who runs a group of chief executives, would you take my people out of their comfort zone for a weekend, say, and take them rock climbing? Because I heard your story in 2002, and I wonder if you'd take them climbing. And I hadn't been climbing for years. I've got a family, and I'd stopped all that lot and getting on with life. And I said, health and safety will prevent this, so I won't be able to do that, but thank you for the kind offer. He said, it's okay, one of my members runs a firm of solicitors. They can write a waiver, everyone can sign that, so you can take them climbing anyway. So I said, so how long have I got? He said, well, 6 months. So I thought, I'll do it. And so I had this project for myself to go back to Stanage Edge. I thought, I'll take them back to the very crag where I did the very first climb with Mr. Shannon. And so that's what a group of chief executives look like when they're going on a climbing break. A couple of these dicks didn't take it very seriously, dressed as Spider-Man, but terrible. But we did have a great day on the very crag of the very first time I ever climbed. But the best photograph, for me at least, is that it's not a hard climb. That's me at the top. But that's Mr. Shannon, 72. So I thought, if we're going to do this authentically, we'll go back to where it all started and we'll do it together. We had such a great day climbing. Then the group went after their day, and I said to Tony, let's spend the weekend climbing here. So we rolled back the years, did the stuff that we used to do, but couldn't do lots of routes. And I said to him, did you ever have a dream that never came true? A picture that, that never happened? Because my whole life has been about urging people to go bigger, aim larger, because it worked for me and the teaching I did as a young man. And I wondered if you had one. Do you know, he said, rather wistfully, he said, I always wanted to climb in California, Yosemite Valley. That would have been something else. El Capitan was the one. And when I was a kid, I used to dream about it. I thought, right, let's do that then. I presume you're retired. If you're retired, I guess you've got some time to train. He said, oh, Marcus, you're even madder than you used to be. I said, no, but what about it? And so this was just an advert to say you can be. In those days, I was 55. I thought, I'm going to get fit again. And I'm going to have a proper go. So this was me getting fit and climbing. I just got really back into practice. And I got into such a regime that I was working in Oman. There was nothing to climb. So I got into trouble for climbing the hotel. But anyway, but that's the end of the story. There's Mr. Shannon here. We got to Yosemite Valley. And this is a group of crack climbers, super climbers in Britain. And Tony and I. And that's the head wall of El Capitan, with me leading it. But more importantly, at 73, there's Mr. Shannon. You don't do that. But we had the time of our lives. But it's amazing how one person can egg another one on, and that's the real thing. It's been a complete treat. I'm way past my time. Thank you ever so much for looking interested. I trust that you can use this, okay? All that stuff we mentioned earlier about being a leader in a really good place, including other people in your picture, giving them control. That's the hard bit, giving it away and allowing people to thrive in ways which we don't know how they're going to do yet, and cheering them on as they go. But it's been a complete treat. I completely respect what you do, love what you do. Coming from a now farming family, I think this is your time. Thank you ever so much.